All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending this Forvis Mazars webinar, and we hope you enjoy it today and get a lot of good, useful information. Make sure you pay attention to those polling questions and enjoy the presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah, who's going to provide a little bit more information before we start it off. So let's see if we can get the screen shared and go from there. All right, Sarah, take it away.
Will do. Thank you. So good morning, and thank you for participating in our webinar, How to Collaborate and Plan with Solver. So a little about Forvis Mazars. We are an independent member of Forvis Mazars Global, a leading global professional services network. Ranked among the largest public accounting firms in the United States, our team members are dedicated to providing an unmatched client experience through the delivery of assurance, tax, and consulting services for clients in all 50 states and internationally. As part of the firm's consulting services, Business Technology Services provides analysis, design, implementation, upgrade, training, and support services for accounting and ERP systems and sales and marketing CRM systems. Our end-to-end solutions can help clients achieve their digital transformation goals. At a glance, these are the technologies Business Technology Services supports. Today, we'll be focusing on Solver, an extended financial planning and analysis tool. Our presenter today is Charles. You got to meet him for those brief seconds before we did the screen share. So Charles is a senior manager at Forvis Mazars and has more than 30 years of experience. In his experience, Charles has worked with a variety of industries and solutions. He implements, trains, and supports analytical reporting and planning solutions, including Solver, SQL Server reporting services, and Power BI. As a frequent contributor and speaker, Charles can be found on Forvis Mazars Foresights, LinkedIn, and at conferences such as Solver Ascend, which he just was at and won the Modern Marketing Award, so congrats, and Dynamics Communities, and that will be in San Antonio this October. So again, thank you for participating in today's webinar. Now I will turn over the presentation to Charles.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. And again, thank you to everybody that is here to attend this webinar. And today we're going to be talking about budgeting and planning and all that sort of good stuff with the Solver FP&A app. Now you may be wondering, what in the world does FP&A mean? Well, that is extended financial planning and analysis. And extended because it's not just for finance, but it can be used for sales and payroll and manufacturing and other areas of the company, right? And we'll take a look at examples of planning templates that you can create in Solver. So let's talk about our objectives today. Talk about how you can use budgeting and forecasting across the organization. So we just gave some ideas of different areas outside of the accounting department, let's say, but we're going to look at some various areas that you can utilize Solver to help you manage. We're going to talk about how templates are designed. So one of the differences between, every app that's out there is how you actually do things, right? So everybody can show you some pretty screens, but we're going to get into the ingredients like a cooking show and show not only how the cake looks coming out of the oven, but how you actually can build or create that cake yourself. And then we'll talk about how reporting and planning are used together so that you can, once you enter that budget or forecast data, you can then turn around and see it reflected in reports. All right. So if your plans have you learning about these items, you're in the right place. So let's get started. So here is our agenda. We're going to talk about what Solver is. Then we're going to look at planning templates, workflows and input flow, and using planning templates. I kind of feel like I'm on a game show listing the categories, but those are the items that we're going to discuss today. Now, if you've ever attended a webinar of mine, you'll see that we do a lot of demo. If you've never attended a webinar and you came here hoping to see a lot of PowerPoint slides, I may disappoint you in that, because we're going to really focus on the product and showing you how to use the product and not PowerPoints. But feel free to download our PowerPoint slides at any time, and you'll have them available. So let's talk about what is Solver. Now, because we have a few people here who may be interested in CPE credit as part of their attendance, we do have some CPE questions, and the first one, I believe, is right now. So what brings you to today's webinar? So there are a lot of reasons people attend webinars, so we'll see if any of those options are yours. So take a moment, just like on Jeopardy, to answer that question, and then we'll move forward. If you have any questions throughout, by all means, put them in the question area, the chat window, or I'm sorry, not chat window, but the Q&A area, and we'll get those answered as we go. If there's anything you want to see specifically, put that in the window, and we'll get try to get that answered as we go. Also, if you're just looking for more connections on LinkedIn, Sarah mentioned that I do things on LinkedIn, and I'm still searching for more people to come and connect with me. Everything that we have webinar-wise, and then more information about Solver and Power BI, we put into LinkedIn. So if you want some free information, go to LinkedIn, find me at Charles Allen, Forvis Mazars, and then we'll meet. All right, so most people here are for a better approach to creating budgets and forecasts. Perfect. And then the second one is another budgeting tool. All right, so that's great. So let's talk about what the Solver solution is. Well, as we said, it's an FP&A. I almost have a hard time saying that. That's FP&A. So financial planning and analysis. But as we said, it's beyond that. It's a solution for doing reporting, planning, and it also includes a link to Power BI, so you can use, or Tableau, you can use it as sources for those items. And it can basically handle really any kind of data. Now, how the data gets in depends on the product that you're pulling it from, but we can definitely talk about that. If you have questions about your specific source data, put them in the chat window or put them in the survey at the end, and we'll answer those questions. It is reporting and planning. Now, the nice thing is some solutions out there actually have two kind of different approaches to reports and plans. Some solutions don't even have reporting. Some solutions don't have planning. But Solver is the same thing. And it's really two sides of the same coin. Because as you'll see, when we look at reports and plans, they look identical. And that's because they're built the same way. The difference is one is for reporting data and one is for entering data. But you design them pretty much the same way with one extra step, which we'll talk about. It's cell-driven. So when we create templates in Solver, we are using Excel as the report or template design experience. And what that means is today, a lot of you are most likely downloading data into a spreadsheet or multiple Excel sheets, combining all that, and then creating budget models and reporting models based on that downloaded data. The difference here is we're not downloading anything. The data is sitting in a warehouse. And what we are doing in Excel is we are connecting to that data in the data warehouse, which is inside of the Solver environment. And then we are pulling in fields from the data warehouse into our templates. Okay, So we design using Excel, and then we deploy into the cloud. One other key element is, as I said, you design things the same way, whether or not you're creating a report or you're creating a planning template. And the only difference is when you design a planning template, you add the storage settings. So you got to tell it, well, if I'm going to let people enter data, where do I want that data to be saved? And that's going to be saved in the Solver Data Warehouse. Now, Solver Data Warehouse is based on the Microsoft Azure SQL database, but Solver it's not a Microsoft application. It's a Solver global application, but it is purely in a Microsoft world, okay? But we have clients using NetSuite, Sage, and all sorts of other products you probably never even heard of. So the key is to get that data from wherever it is into the data warehouse, and then you can use it for planning and reporting, okay? And then we do that using connectors. So there are about 24 or so connectors. Some of those are fairly generic, like just connecting to a SQL database or connecting to files. But some are very specific, like pointing to Microsoft F&O or Business Central or Sage Intacct or SAP and some other products out there, okay? So let's take a quick look. We won't read through this slide, but the key is to understand that picture. So you see in the middle, you've got the data warehouse. That's the Azure SQL data warehouse. And this is not building a data warehouse like you would if you were starting from scratch. So this data warehouse is made for companies who really know what they want and want to look at it more from a business analyst perspective and not from a data architecture perspective, okay? Because it's going to do a lot of that data architecture for you when you go in to create, let's say, a module for storing revenue data, okay? So it's really kind of not a do-it-yourself warehouse, it's a build-it-yourself warehouse, but it's got a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff already happening for you. On top of that warehouse is reporting, planning, and analysis. The analysis can be Power BI, Tableau, or we have clients actually doing analysis in Excel because a lot of people are very familiar with Excel, know how to create charts, and so they like to just do it in Excel. And then at the bottom, you can see, it's a little covered up a little bit. Whoops. There we go. You can see that it can pull from various sources. So you may wonder, well, if I have an ERP, where does Solver come in? Well, you can see on the left side where ERPs end and where Solver begins. Okay? Again, download this guy, this PowerPoint, you'll have all that good information there. So the key thing here is that Solver is its own environment. It stands alone. It pulls the data from the ERP or whatever data sources you want, and it uses that data for reporting and planning. That's all we're doing, reporting and planning. So what do you get when you get Solver? How do you buy it? Well, you buy the Solver suite. You buy a subscription. So you have the data warehouse, reporting, planning, the marketplace, which is a bunch of templates, about 120 plus templates that Solver has created, e-learning, and as we said, the Azure cloud. So all that is included in your user license. Now, there are actually two kind of licenses. There's a user license for people who really may need to do a lot of different things or are very focused. And then you have a viewer license for people who are only going to be viewing reports, all right? They're not going to run reports on their own, but they need to be able to view what has been shared with them, okay? That's a viewer. So you have users and viewers. All right, so we have another polling question. So Solver includes reporting and planning. So you can see we try to make these questions really challenging. So take a moment to answer that question.
Charles,
Yes.
this time too, I can let you know when the results are in.
Oh, great. All right. Well, then I'll leave it right here.
And this one's just a 3-part answer, so easy peasy.
That's right. Yeah, we try to make things easy. We would do just A and B, but some people just don't know. So you gotta have room for error.
Yeah, if we had, more than 5% on no, I would be very sad.
That is, Sarah also mentioned, we recently had the Solver Ascend conference, which is an annual conference Solver has. And it's held every year right now in August, just in time for school. But at that, they have partner days and they have customer days where customers and prospects can go and learn what's coming in the product and what has been delivered over the last 12 months. Some of the big things coming in the next 12 months here are things like Copilot, which is artificial intelligence. So you'll be able to ask questions, for example, and say, hey, how do I build this report? And then later on, they'll have questions like, tell me who the top 5 customers were, based on this report. And then they'll have a redesigned home screen, which you're going to see in Solver, not the redesigned version, unfortunately, but the current one that's being replaced. And a lot of other cool information, a lot of cool features coming out over the next 12 months.
Yeah, very exciting. And so our results are in, and we have a great audience with us today. Almost 90% said a yes.
All right. So thank you very much. All right. So let's talk about planning templates. Now, I've got a few slides here, not many, and we'll talk about these and we'll actually get into the product. So data integration, we talked about data integration already, and that is to get the various sets of data from your sources into the data warehouse. Parameter driven, what that means is if I have a template, let's say I'm entering payroll expenses, and I've got 20 departments, and I want each department person or head to enter payroll data for that department. Well, the parameter enables those 20 different people to identify what department is going to be used, and then that will then drive what is displayed in the model. So if I'm over sales, I'm only going to be able to enter data for the sales department. And if Sarah's over, let's say the warehouse, then Sarah can only enter data for the warehouse. And the idea is, instead of you building 20 different templates, you build one template and then let security and parameters drive what you're doing. Okay. Web-based data entry, as we said earlier, you design in Excel and you deploy in the cloud. Now, technically speaking, you could also run it in Excel if you wanted to, but the idea is that you just tell the users, log into this website, go to this place, and enter your data. That's all you need to do. And in fact, we'll even give you a link. We'll send you an email that says, hey, Bill, here's the link to go enter your budget data. So all Bill has to do is click the link and it'll take him right where he needs to be. Workflow. If you are in charge of making sure people are getting their work done, you can set up a workflow so that you can monitor the status of Bill and Sarah and myself. Okay? Comments and line items. A lot of people like people to put in the comments as to why they came up with the numbers they did. You can also have people put in line item details. So if I'm putting in, let's say, travel and entertainment as one of my line items, I can put in, what conferences I'm going to attend and how much each of those conferences is going to cost. And then I can add comments for each one of those, or in general at the top level as well. And then dynamic forecasting and modeling, right? You want to be able to make this thing as flexible as possible. So maybe you want to just say, you know what, I'm expecting a 3% increase over these types of costs. So let me just put in a few assumptions and let those drive my forecast or my budgets. So that is something that you can do quite easily. And, we mentioned Excel earlier. One thing I want to not pound into your head, but I want to make sure you remember is that we're using Excel as you can use Excel. So formulas and formatting and calculations and all that stuff that you do today, you can do here. And then what Solver is doing is bringing in the data for you. So if you think about that picture we saw earlier, at the bottom we had those various data sources. Those are all flowing into the warehouse. And then you are building templates that use the data in that warehouse. Okay. So we have a few slides, but you know what? Let's go ahead and just hop on over to Solver and we'll take a look. If I can find it. There we go. And of course, we got to log back in.
Security parameters, always pros and cons, right?
Yeah, I can't have people just sitting around using up the login all day long. All right. So it's taking a little longer because I'm unfortunately not on my normal hi-fi or Wi-Fi environment today. So we'll give it a second to think. Not sure why it's taking so long, but there we go. All right, so there's our homepage for now. But as I said, later on, this homepage is going to be replaced with a new one. It's going to have activities and favorite reports or favorite templates and things like that. Today, it's a landing page, and then we go over here to the navigation pane, and that's where we work. And even in the new, after the homepage is redesigned, you're still going to use the navigation pane. A lot of you will. All right, so let's talk about what's on that navigation pane. We have reporting, planning, and at the very bottom, we have our data warehouse. Okay, so just to show you here in the data warehouse, what we do is we create modules. Now, if there's anybody here that's a database person, think of a module as a fact table with dimensions. So if you look here at accounts payable is a table or a module that stores activity related to accounts payable. And then those blue fields inside of that box are dimensions for that data. So basically, if you think about an AP transaction, you've got the account, the category, things like that. But then you have other fields like the amount, the transaction number, and some other items, right? But those change on a record by record basis. But here we have a list of vendors, a list of entities, a list of departments, and so on that are used with that data. Solver, you have about 500 modules that you can create. So I don't see anybody here running out of room to create modules. And as we scroll through, you can see I've got a lot of different modules here. There's good old general ledger, Google Analytics, and then we go down, we have inventory and so on. So these are all modules that store data. But a module doesn't have to necessarily just fit like an accounting term. It can be anything. So maybe you want to be able to do reporting or planning, and you need to combine data that doesn't just sit specifically in a module as we traditionally think of it. So you can build your own module to store whatever data you want and either pull it from other modules or pull it from a source table, okay, or tables. All right, so let's go down here to our planning templates. So we're going to go to input templates. And that is where users typically interact. Now, if we're using workflow, then users typically don't go necessarily to this view. They go actually just to an assignment, and then they can go enter their budget data. So you notice we have assignments here on this list. Okay, but let's talk about input templates. I'm just going to go down to department budget. All right, so we have a few different items here. These are stuff that we see all the time from our clients: personnel budgets, capital budgets, other expenses. A lot of people, of course, have revenue, but revenue is so different based on each company. This one is just looking at price and quantity, but you may have revenue driven completely different ways. But let's take a look at a simple one, such as other expenses, and we'll look at how it's built, and then we'll look at some others. So we're going to click on other expenses, and let's make it a little bigger so you can see it. All right. So what you see here is we have just a very simple report or template, and it's got a list of accounts, comments, and then some amounts. Now you notice a lot of these amounts have a little triangle at the top, and it's telling you that that cell is locked because it contains line item details. What that means is it's not going to let me just come over here and type in a new number, because a user came down to spreading and line item details and entered some details. Okay? And if that user says, oh, I forgot to put some numbers here, I'll put 100 right there. You'll notice once I do that, the number changed, went from 1223 to 1323. And if I have some comments about that, I can type those right here. And now you'll notice that there's a little indicator there that shows you what those items are. So if I'm a budget approver or reviewer, I may want to see how did Bill come up with his numbers. And so as that reviewer or approver, you'll be able to open up this template and see everything that was entered, just like Bill. Now, when you're also entering this, you'll notice up above, even though it's not showing on this one, you can have the system display comparable or comparable data. That way, if the user is just using this view here, they don't have to keep going up and down with their eyes. They can just stay in this one and see what they entered in prior years. You can also look at either actual or budget data, depending on what you're doing. And then the other thing you may want to do is spreading. So let's scroll down here to a blank row. So here, I can click on Show Spreading, and I can spread a number. So if somebody says, all right, it's just going to be $1,200 all the way across, I can have different distribution rules, such as one is just going to go even all the way across, or maybe I only have certain months that should get any amounts, or maybe I have some months that have a larger weighting. Maybe during the summer, we have more than we have others. So maybe if I'm managing a golf course, I'm going to have more expenses, of course, in the hotter months than I will in January or February, depending on where I live in the country. So you may have different distribution rules for different purposes. Okay. And then when you're done, come down here, scroll down. And I'm sorry, that's blocking our way. We're going to go ahead and hit OK, maybe. All right. Well, we're having a little display issue, but that's what that is going to do for us. There we go. Spread. All right. So weird screen problems. But there we go. There's our $100 all the way across, just like we told it to do. And if I wanted to put in a comment, then of course I can type that right there. And then when the user is done, the user simply just comes and saves their data. So no big deal. Now, if you're using workflow, you may have users actually completing an assignment rather than just hitting save. So if you're using workflow, what might happen is a user gets a notification by email that says you've been assigned this personnel or other expense template. And then when the user logs in, the user can have a notification up here, or the user can come down here to assignments and then see what assignments that user has. And I'm going to go to single assignments, and I'm going to click on this guy right here. And then you'll notice I put in my department, put in my period, and then I hit run. All right,
Charles,
that's going to run this tip. Go ahead.
Yeah, while that's running, we do have a question from Sharon, and she asked, can you import data into the templates, specifically payroll?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways to get that data in. There is the integration capabilities where you can import data from a file rather than importing or rather than using a template. We've also had clients where they would, and in fact, we have one right now that's going to be distributing spreadsheets. And then the users are going to fill in the spreadsheets and send them back. And then they'll basically copy and paste from the spreadsheets that they get back into the template. So you can do it three ways. You can have users log in and enter data into the template. You can import the data into the data warehouse from a file. And then third, you can copy and paste from a spreadsheet into a template. All right. Thank you, Sharon. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger because it's wide. All right, so here, as you can see, we have a very simple budget. I'm going to show you this one behind the scenes too. So all we're asking the user to do is come in here, put in some numbers, and then hit save. Very simple, okay? All right, so since we said we want to be able to do that, let's go back here. Now you see this is called Simple Monthly Budget. We're going to go back to Input Templates, and we're going to come over here, and we're going to actually search for that. And there it is. So we're going to click on this guy right here, and we're going to hit Edit. And we got a lot to go, so we won't build it from scratch, but we'll just kind of give you an idea of how this thing works. Now, if you remember, when we looked at it in the web, we have 5 revenue accounts, okay? But here, you only see one. It's a very simple design. You can't say that I'm not somebody who adheres to aesthetics in my designs. But here we have our title. We have a row that's going to show the account description, and a place for a value. And then we're going to have a column C, which is going to expand into multiple columns. So let's look at the row. And the row, we're saying I want all the accounts that are classified as a revenue account. Very simple. Now they're using the word roll-up level, but that could be anything. It could be account category, it could be whatever. We've had some clients that have multiple categories based on different audiences. But it's just, we're just saying, give me all my accounts that are classified as revenue. You can also do account ranges or wild cards and things like that to do filters. Now you can see that it's expanding. So what that means is when I run this template, it's going to expand that row into multiple rows. Okay. Now, if I go to my column, it's saying next year all. So what that means is it's going to show me all the columns for next year based on the period that I enter. Okay. So if I'm budgeting for 25, I would put 24, but why would I put 24? I could change this to this year, whatever this year is. But the other thing you can do is I'm going to just copy this and I'm going to insert. And now here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change. Let's try that again. Copy this and we're going to paste. There we go. All right. So what I wanted to do is make sure that I had a filter. So I'm going to show actual data, and I'm going to just do year to date. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show year to date through a number, and then I'm going to show all the columns for next year. Okay. And now for this one, I'm going to change this one. Instead of being yellow, I'm going to make it blue. So you can't change blue. And let's add a total. So we talked about totals earlier. So all we're going to do is say sum. Okay, so there we go. And now we're going to save this. And I can run it from Excel, or I can close this, and I'm going to go ahead and run it here. And let's go ahead and publish our changes. Oh, say it's part of a template. So let's just run it here, and we'll hit run. Now notice the period, it's 2021-09. So when I hit run, notice it's showing me what I forgot to turn off the expanding columns, but that's all right. It's showing me my actuals for 9 months, going all the way. Oops, can do that. Going all the way to September, and then it's showing my budget for next year for 12 months. Okay, so just like that, we added a formula, we added data for the current year, and that's it. So we have a report or a template that has its spanning rows and its spanning columns. A lot of people like to do things like run rates or estimated year to date. You know, if they had 12 months worth of data, that's just Excel calculations. So very simple. So while we have a couple of minutes left in this one, let's go here. Let's go back to our department budget, and you can see personnel. A lot of people love personnel budgets. So the idea here is you get data from your payroll provider, you import your employee master, you put in the current information like their salaries and what benefits they have, and then for budgeting purposes, you can let them put in future changes. And this is a very simple one, as you can see, but you might have bonuses, you might have commissions, you might have salary changes, you might also have different types of benefits. So instead of just saying yes or no, you might actually have columns for retirement, for life insurance, for health insurance, and so on and so forth. So you can make this as fancy as you want. And then you'll notice as we scroll to the right, we've got all these calculations by month. And then as we scroll down, you can see that it's affecting my general ledger. So when a user enters data for payroll, they are saving the payroll data into a payroll module, and they're saving the GL impact of that data into the GL module. Okay, so it's a two module hit. All right, let's just take another look at another one before we get to our next section. All right, so we're going to go here. Let's turn that off. There we go. So we have some other types of items that you might use. Should go here. There we go. So here, let's look at this guy. We have a client right now that did some similar type stuff to this one, where they had some assumptions for what kind of percentage increases they wanted to use. And then as you can see here, those percentage increases are appearing. But then, I'm sorry, right here. But then a user can come in and override that and put in a different number. All right. And then that's going to change to the right what my amounts are. Not my actuals, of course, but my forecast. Okay. So this is, again, just using Excel to do that calculation. All right. And there you go. Pretty simple stuff. All right. Now, one thing I also want to note is the exporting. So since we had somebody ask about importing, if I do hit the export, this is going to create an Excel file that looks exactly like it does on the screen. And the reason is because it was built using Excel, right? So you don't have to worry about cleaning it up once it gets there. It's going to look exactly the same. So in another example of copying and pasting, we had a client that would run the template. They would export it as is, provide that file to a user. The user completes the file, sends the file back, and then a person runs the template again and copies and pastes from that user into the template. Okay. So if you don't want people entering data directly, you can do it that way.
Charles, on that note, we have a question from Gina. And she asked, in order to have a user enter budget data into Solver, what sort of license would the individual need?
So the user is going to use a user license, USER, just to make sure you're hearing me correctly. And that's opposed to a viewer license, VIEWER. So user is the type of license that user needs. Thank you very much. All right. So let's go back, make sure we cover our presentation. So again, we do have various sample templates that you can look at to see the options here. Here's the one we just saw a moment ago. And of course, we did our demo, and hey, we have a third polling question. So let's take a look at that. Templates can be created for different types of budgets. So we have seen so many different types of templates. Of course, it's all based on the industry. A lot of companies like to use them for pro forma type of work, where you may be looking at adding a new location, for example. And so you can build a template for that purpose. And then you can have data going into pro forma data, into budget data, and other things. Another thing is, if you think to go outside of planning, you may have other types of inputs that you want. So for example, we have a client using it for cash flow adjustments, where they have a form and they enter the adjustments for cash flow. And then they use those adjustments, of course, in their reports. And then you might have EBITDA adjustments as well, besides just adding back depreciation and things like that. So that as long as you want to have a way to let users enter data without making them import a file, that's where the budgeting and planning functionality can be used.
Results are in. So 94% said a yes.
All right, so let's talk about workflows. So workflows, as we said, creates a process for managing, helps visibility so you can see what people are doing. Have they started yet? Are they in progress? And you can create assignments for your users. So let's hop on over to Solver real quick, take a look at that. So we're going to go to workflow. And let's just take a look at this guy right here. Let's look at this department. We're going to hit edit. And here you just have some things like the name of the workflow, when it's active. Now, speaking of that, you also have what's called planning security. So let's say you get through your budget season, you're all done, and you want to make darn sure that nobody goes in and changes their numbers. So there is a functionality in Solver called planning security, where you can lock down those budgets to stop anybody from keying in data into a template. Okay. You can set reviewers and approvers. Then down here, based on the templates that you pick, it's going to show the various parameters that can be used. Okay. Now you'll notice in some cases you can hard code the answer, or you can let the user decide. So it just depends on the situation. Okay. And then down here we have our users, and then which items or which templates that user is going to be assigned. All right. So once that is done, once you have run that workflow, you can then come over here. You can also see what's been completed. Okay. And then if I come over here to my workflows again, excuse me, goodness, all right. Come back over here, you can also see the progress of those items. Okay. And then if we come down here to assignments, go to workflows, you can see this one's in progress. And then there'll be other places where you can go. You can see here, for example, I've got 1 out of 6 completed. So you can go and see who has completed their budgets. Okay. Now, the other thing is input flow. So let's talk about what input flow is. This is a tool that can be very useful. I'll give you an example. We have a client and they have a revenue template. And that revenue template is calculated from top to bottom based on assumptions. So number of patients, number of days, revenue rates, things like that. And then based on those drivers, when they save those drivers, that data can automatically run their revenue template for them. So if the only reason for that revenue template is to do all those calculations and then save the data, but it's not actually doing anything else or doesn't require any input, then there's no reason to make a user open it. All the user has to do is they go in, open up an assumptions template, put in the numbers, hit save, and when they hit save, what it's going to do is it's automatically going to run that template for them. And you can have it run multiple templates as well. If we look at this guy right here, we'll hit edit. You can see that I have an assumptions tab that is running my payroll budget. So I may have assumptions for tax rates, for benefit rates, and other types of items. And then that will automatically update the data in my personnel template. Okay, so that's input flow and workflow. And again, everything that I'm saying is included, nothing extra to buy. The only thing you have to decide is how many users and viewers you need. All right, so let's go back to our thing here. Here's some more screenshots. And this is a screenshot showing where people are in the process. So you can see that Charles Allen is in progress on these two items and has completed this item. Charles got a lot of work to do. Okay. So we talked about input flow, updating forms from other forms, helps with order of operation, helps you with automating data updates, and we gave that example of assumptions driving revenue or payroll. Okay. All right. We talked about using, which we already saw, you log in and you enter that data. So you are assigned templates if you use workflow. If you don't use workflow, you don't have to use workflow. You can just come in and use it. So if a user can log in here, you can just say, hey, user, go over here, go to input templates, go to the category that I've shared with you, and then go use the forms. You can also use what's called Process Manager to help users. And that kind of gives them a flow of the process. So you'll notice here I have one called a preparation checklist. So if I click on that, it's really just a checklist, but it can be a lot more than a checklist, because what you can do is you can add links to the various templates that you want users to use. You can assign users to those steps, and you can assign due dates. So think of Process Manager is not workflow really. It's just a checklist, but it's a checklist that allows you to organize the process for your users, okay? And it can be used with workflow if you want, or just think of it as an option. So either workflow or Process Manager. But it is a process that you can come in here and build your own items. So if we come in here, for example, to this one, so you can see I'm just going down and marking off as I go. So this comes with a product, no big deals. And here's an example where I have a link, an assignee, and a due date. All right. And if I click on that, it's just going to open up my assumptions template. And there it is. All right. So again, the idea is users log in, or you provide them the files like we discussed, have them fill them in remotely and send them back, or you can import the data from spreadsheets. Okay. All right, here is our last polling question. Yeah, we are
Yes.
not going to get this one until after the webinar. So make sure you say yes or no. If you say yes, then you're going to get a message from me or a colleague of mine. And if you say no, then we won't. But if you have any questions, I want to make sure you can put them in the Q&A button still, or the Q&A area, or there is a survey that you can complete where you can put in questions after the webinar.
I do believe we got
So,
to all
Sarah,
of today's live questions. So we
right.
will look for the results on Q4 and then in the survey responses. And we would like to invite you to Charles's September webinar. It's near the end of September, and it will be all about Microsoft Fabric. So that link is provided here in the webinar platform. And stay tuned for the archive email. We'll have the recording of today's session and links to related content. So again, Charles, it was a great demonstration. Thank you for another great webinar. And thank you for your time today to our audience members.
Thank you guys, everybody, for coming today.